This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
What's up, folks? Welcome in. Another wonderful edition of Money Moves here on VSiN. It is Jonathan Von Tobel flying solo today. Stormy Buonantony out on the road. She'll be on the sidelines for Texas and Kentucky later this weekend. So I can't wait to see what they've got. They're actually out there, I think, were they at Churchill down today? I think shooting some B-roll and whatnot. She got to go check that out. So looking forward to seeing what that provides when we get to see the broadcast tomorrow. But we still have a great show on tap for you today as we get ready for a weekend of football. So let's not waste any more time and get right to it.
It's time for the top headlines and topics of the day. This is The Rundown.
It's a great slate of Friday night games. I'm actually very much looking forward to Friday night football tonight. We have a bunch of college contests, among them a big one in the ACC as Miami will take on Louisville. They're a near 2-touchdown favorite, but the number starting to come crashing down in favor of the Cardinals. So we'll get to the crux of the issue there, why that's coming down. We have a Big Ten matchup between Nebraska and Minnesota, and a little bit on the West Coast tonight, as I think the headliner, fresh off another report from Pablo Torre, will be North Carolina taking on Cal. Jaron Calvé-Sangapulitele and the Golden Bears trying to get a big win and maybe a cover as now an 8.5-point dog. A lot of line moves. We'll get to every single one of them coming up a little bit later in the program. Also on deck a little bit later today, we have our usual Friday edition of the Market Power Ratings. As we look ahead to what Week 7 provides, we have a team that has now thrust itself into the best-rated slot in the National Football League, along with one other team that has been up there the whole time. We also have some really fascinating questions to ask and to answer about what's going to happen with some of these teams, including some big downgrades. We'll go over the biggest upgrades of the season, the biggest downgrades of the season. You can tell where they're at and see what some of the effects are for the lines for Week 7. Really looking forward to our breakdown coming up a little bit later in this hour. But we begin, as we usually do, with a little bit about last night. Thursday night football, boy, oh boy, the senior citizen shootout. How about that? It's supposed to be a bunch of old guys doing nothing. And in fact, it was an electric game, a high-scoring game. Bengals get a 33-31 victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers last night. A big win, of course, for Cincinnati. We'll talk about the future ramifications, as many are now asking, can the Cincinnati Bengals stay afloat and wait for Joe Burrow to come back? But I think we have to begin with the favorite that goes down on the road, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's first hear from Mike Tomlin explaining to us what happened in that game last night.
You know, a tough, hard-fought game, but certainly got to give credit to those guys, the Bengals. They did what was required to win. They made a few more plays than we did. Just from an analysis perspective, I just thought, the first half, we allowed them to run the ball too much. I think they had about 100 yards rushing at the half, and then we turned the ball over a couple times. And so that just kind of set a negative trajectory, and we're fighting uphill the rest of the way. I certainly appreciate the fight, but, man, we got to be cleaner. We got to be better.
You know, I don't know if I wanted to come here. I was wrestling with the idea of maybe coming in and being like, see, this is what I'm talking about, right? Like, this is what we've meant with the Steelers team all along. But at the very least, you should give them some credit, as Tomlin mentions there. Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers really did put on a very good show, especially offensively. Rodgers with the 4 touchdown passes. Really, I would ding him for one of the 2 interceptions that were thrown. I believe the weird fumble by DK Metcalf on the sideline was charged as an interception for him as well. So overall, I think Rodgers and this offense did enough. But here's the problem with this team, and this is something we've talked about quite a bit. It was a little bit of a topic yesterday on social media. Every metric pointed to the Steelers team maybe not being as good as what the record indicated. And now you're a 4-2 team that has just outscored its opponents by 12 points over the course of this entire season, and it's coming off of a 14-point win the week prior to the Cleveland Browns. I don't think this team is a 4-win team and is going to lose out the rest of the way. But as you look at the schedule moving forward for the Pittsburgh Steelers, that is where you get into some of the questions. And again, I will reiterate, as we discussed and threw out there to Stormy yesterday, last week, you see that win against the Browns 23-9. That was the lone game so far this year in which the Pittsburgh Steelers have outgained their opponent from a yardage standpoint. Again, last night, outgained by 74 yards. They finally, in a game for the first time this season, lose out the turnover battle. That's obviously a big one. They are now -2 in the turnover column yesterday. Of course, they end up losing the game. But look at what that schedule is for a Pittsburgh team that, from a record standpoint, probably was a little fraudulent. You get the Packers, you get the Colts, you get the Chargers, you get a Bengals team that just beat you. You have to go to the Bears, who are much improved. Baltimore, and the Buffalo, not in that order. These next few games for Pittsburgh, we're going to learn a lot because you look at the schedule and the way that this has been so far. There's a couple of these contests, specifically the Patriots game, of course, at the top of mind, that you probably should have taken a loss in. And now, as you move forward, I think some of your blemishes are going to come to the surface. But it's not time to panic. Let's hear one more from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Aaron Rodgers talked about going forward for this team.
Well, I think you got to realize, listen, we want to win every game. There needs to be an expectation of winning, but this is a short week, division opponent, anything can happen. Obviously, Joe played really well for them, and Chase and T got going for him. But this is the NFL. You know, we had a chance to really open up some space, but we're 4-2, still first in the division. Got a couple, home games coming up, back-to-back, another Sunday night opportunity against my former team. So I'm not going to ride the roller coaster, and I know Mike isn't, and hopefully you guys follow suit.
The roller coaster, of course, being the up-and-down nature of the season, and what you're looking at for the Steelers team is how the question was prefaced to Aaron Rodgers last night. But this loss, as much as it might seem insignificant for a team that is 4-2 in a division looks brutal, this does actually carry a lot of weight in the AFC North. Not only do you open the door for a Cincinnati Bengals team that I think more than likely is going to be fighting for a wild card spot as you move forward, but we'll see if that's the case. It opens the door for the Baltimore Ravens, who are waiting for Lamar Jackson to come back. They are plus 135 in the AFC North, right behind the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is going to be a division that going into last night had the Steelers won, sitting at 5-1 with a win in conference play, in division play, another one. You were going to look at this and say, all right, Steelers are maybe in position, even despite the fact that I don't think they're particularly good, to maybe run away with this thing. This now opens this up for the Baltimore Ravens to potentially come back here with Lamar Jackson, with a healthier group, and take care of business. And their schedule over the next few weeks is almost the opposite of what you've seen from the Pittsburgh Steelers in terms of the level of challenge that Baltimore has. It's a very easy stretch coming up for the Ravens coming out of their bye week. Remember, they're off this week. But when they come back, they get the Bears at home, the Dolphins, the Vikings, the Browns, the Jets, Bengals. I mean, when they go into that matchup with the Steelers, Mitch Moss and I spoke about this on Pod to the Futures earlier this week, wherever you get your podcasts, about what this looks like for Baltimore. We were discussing NFL futures and teams you should buy in on potentially. This is a team that not only is still in position to win their division, it's a team that still, if they can rip off these wins like maybe it looks like on this schedule that is very opportunistic, you're looking at a Baltimore team that at 25-1 or in that range to win the Super Bowl still could maybe achieve all of the things that most expect them to as you move forward. And as far as the Bengals are concerned, I am going to be very curious how this looks moving forward. There was a lot of, hey man, Joe Flacco, here he is again. This Bengals team can tread water. They can do this. They can move forward, and Flacco can do enough for them. And Flacco looked great. 49 dropbacks yesterday, 7.3 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, didn't commit a turnover-worthy play, which I think is always the big thing for Flacco. If you look at what he has done in a Bengals uniform, he has yet to throw an interceptable pass. That's always a good thing when you look at the way that Flacco has played throughout his entire career. Having said that, this is still Joe Flacco, and I am amazed by our ability to erase what we have seen over the course of a larger sample size and glom on to a shorter sample size that we just watched. Joe Flacco is still exactly who he is. These are 2 really good games, but we've had questions about the Steelers' defense, as we have talked about. He was getting the ball out quick. I don't think I'm freaking out too much about what a Cincinnati Bengals-led team by Joe Flacco looks like. But then again, they too have a pretty interesting schedule as you move forward. You do have one more game against the Steelers, but post that, if you can take advantage of the Jets, the Bears going into the bye, you might put yourself in position to do so. But I'm going to venture a guess that Joe Flacco that was playing a couple of games in Cleveland and the Joe Flacco that started a few games for the Indianapolis Colts and over the course of the larger sample size of the last year and a half was a very below-average quarterback is likely going to appear at some point in the near future for the Cincinnati Bengals. I've been wrong many times before, but I would assume that that is the case, and I'm not running to the window to go with over a win total, adjusted win total, or maybe even ask this team to make a run in this division. I still think you're really behind the 8 ball and very much praying that Flacco can keep this up, which I would say the larger sample size is not going to allow you to do so. The other trend from last night, which I think means nothing, but it's at least worth pointing out, is we had another one of these road favorites, or just these favorites in general, take a loss on the chin last night. How about this? In prime time, the last 8 games, favorites now 1-7 straight up, We have last night the Steelers as 5.5-point favorites. The Commanders on Monday Night Football as part of that doubleheader with the Bills. Both teams, 5.5 and 3.5-point favorites respectively, lose. Sunday Night Football, we saw the Chiefs get it done as 2.5-point favorites, ended up covering that number. But then the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Rams, all as favorites. 3 of them, by the way, over touchdown favorites, losing outright in prime time, 1-7 straight up in the last 8 contests. Now, I would probably say that means nothing, but I will say these Thursday night games are getting pretty wonky as we have seen them now with the Rams, the Eagles, and, of course, the Steelers. And my whole point here would be is that at the very least there is something to that makes them different in that it is a short week, it is hard to recover, it is hard to get ready for an opponent on said short week, and that some of these dogs might have a little bit more of a shot at springing the upset when the teams are still healing, when you don't have as much time to get ready for some of your opponents and even lesser opponents at that. And I think maybe, just maybe, there might be something, some of these dogs being as live as they are on these short weeks. But a big spot and a really good game as we move forward with this Steelers team as well. I'm going to be curious to see what the market wants to do with them. We're going to have our market ratings coming up at the bottom of the hour. Steelers, from a power rating standpoint, equals with the Jags, right behind teams like the Patriots, the Falcons, the Seahawks, kind of in this glut in terms of all these teams really within a point of each other. But the Steelers are a team that I think market's probably going to start to figure out pretty soon here. Got a little high on them last night. I'm sure we'll see a course correction pretty soon. All right, let's take our break. When we come back, we'll continue this vibe rolling. Mike Palm is going to join us as he usually does in these spots, get his conversation going with a little bit of hockey as we have seen this season, of course, in full swing, and a little bit more as the Aces are finally champs. Got to give him his kudos. Been all over it. Don't go anywhere. Mike Palm and a bunch of great guests joining us here on Money Moves as we move forward.
Watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Mike Palm joins us here at the desk as we are getting ready for the weekend that is in college football, the NFL, NHL, which is in full swing too. Stormy Buonantony, of course, not with us. She is out in Lexington. She gets Texas and Kentucky this weekend. That should be a good one.
It's not bad.
Right?
Maybe closer than people think. Yeah. Ugly Red River rivalry game. I did tell you, I was over at Bar Canada Saturday, and of course, that's the featured game at 12:30, so I had the volume on that. But at halftime, I said, I cannot.
Can't do it anymore.
It's unwatchable. Flipped to CBS to catch Oregon, Indiana, which was a much better game, by the way. And Gary Danielson must have said 4 times in the second half, did Dan Lanning not watch how Kurt Behrens and Parker defended Indiana? Pressure. Yeah, Mendoza made a play with 2 minutes left to beat them, but they pressured them. They came in there and did whatever they wanted to Oregon, which is the first Midwestern Big Ten team to be able to do that so far. So it's interesting.
I am amazed by Indiana because obviously last year, they had the 2 litmus tests. They failed them greatly in terms of taking on the big boys. This year, though, the difference in which they look like physically, they look more physically imposing. You mentioned that game, their ability to get behind the line of scrimmage, that second half where they're all over more and just generating pressure. It's been wildly impressive. And I'll ask you, because you're you watch a lot of Big Ten, you watch a lot of college football. Do we still think in an era this season where there doesn't really seem to be a giant, unbeatable team, not only can this team make the playoff and win a playoff game, could they be that team? Could they be able to win this thing?
Could they beat Ohio State?
That's the question, right?
I mean, they were not competitive against Ohio State last year. As much as he tried to manage and shorten that game, they just got beat in the trenches. Notre Dame, I thought, was a little different. I really thought they start the game out, remember, they get the turnover or whatever, the stop-off word. They go down the field, and they get down to the 3 yard. They rush the next play because they thought there was going to be a review. It was clearly a catch, and then fumble, and then Notre Dame goes 98 yards, Love, with the touchdown. I thought then they played from behind, and he kept going on 4th. They just got outside of themselves. I didn't think Notre Dame killed them. I said the winner of Notre Dame, Indiana, would be in the national championship game.
Sure.
Because the path. Right. The path was incredibly. I mean, you got Georgia without its quarterback, and then you got James Franklin who can't win a big game. And now he can't win any games. He can't win any games. Speaking of that,
we got a big interview coming up this weekend.
What about the 14-point swing and the look ahead to this Penn State Iowa game? Isn't this too much?
I always tend to think yes. Like, I'm always on the side whenever we talk about these giant adjustments. I always tend to gravitate toward, like, all right, like, we're at a point where maybe we've gone a little too far. Like, I don't know, is it a kick in the ass for some of these kids where you realize, oh, like, our head coach is gone, and I understand that our quarterback is hurt now too, but I think some would assume you quit. I think that there's probably a little bit more in the locker room of like, oh, no, like, this is serious now. We better start to get this together.
I auto bet any team that fires their coach the next game.
Sure.
Even horrible Oklahoma State, they fired Gundy finally, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't think they would. I thought because of his whole quarterback there in 20 years and most wins that they'd have let him finish the season, but it got so bad. Next game, catching 21 against Baylor, cover.
Yep.
Right? The dead coach bounced. So it's I just can't process their catching a field goal against Iowa because maybe people are drawing too much of the win in Wisconsin. I mean, Luke Fickell must hate cheese. Yeah. I mean, this is just pathetic what's going on in Wisconsin. But I don't know that you would think they rally around and say, we're better, we got our coach. You know, this should be a rallying cry for them. Although you read their social media, they're still in shock that James Franklin is gone. And plus you lose Aller, who is a decent quarterback, but I thought it was laughable he was the 5th choice for Heisman at the start of the year.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Because he was never, as I told Stormy when we were talking about this, he was never going to put up those Heisman-type numbers in this offense. It just wasn't Franklin's thing. He was going to throw, like, if that had gone down, like 25 touchdowns and like 3 picks, and like that was going to be it, and you were going to be fine the rest of the year. You're not going to have like a dynamic offense with that kid.
Never.
Yeah.
And that's why when they got the ball back after Notre Dame punted with a minute to go, I could not believe he put the ball in the air. Just go to overtime. You're a favorite in that game. They still, and with Aller, we're up a touchdown in the overtime against Oregon, and they're catching 3. I mean, I can't get that. I got to take the points.
Talk about like those sliding door moments. They're up in overtime against Oregon. Imagine if you pulled that off, like the difference in what this season looks like.
2 weeks and a day later, he's fired.
Yes, it's incredible.
They're the number 2 team in the country, up on the number 6 team by a touchdown in overtime. Coming off of a semifinal appearance the year before.
Since we're talking about this, we have a sneaky Good Friday slate today. I do have to ask you about the elephant in the room here. What are we making of North Carolina hitting the road to take on Cal tonight?
I can't believe Stormy's not on the game.
That's what I said. I mean, she's had Cal like 3 times.
Right? I mean, I can't believe it. And reuniting her with Lombardi.
Come on.
This would have been his point. You know,
that's a big flummox on a.
She should have chosen the GM shuffle over her ESPN game.
Right.
You know, the whole coming together of that.
I sent her a tweet. It was like, you put Lombardi and Stormy back together, I'm in.
The story just keeps getting more ludicrous. But I had a friend who said to me, in the midst of all of this, he said, I still bet there's a better chance Belichick's back at North Carolina next year than James Franklin is back at Penn State. This was before they lost, obviously, and he's gone. I said, boy, you were a quick winner on that bet.
Yep.
Cash that thing out. I'm looking forward, actually, to Louisville, Miami tonight.
Okay,
It's a sneaky spot here for Miami, I think.
You guys are down to 11, by the way. That's been a big mover the last couple of hours.
Braum is good in these spots, right? They played them close last year at Louisville. And the game was a scoring fest, but usually within one score. I think it'll be a highly entertaining game tonight. It'll get lost in the shuffle of Game 5 of the American League Championship Series and the Dodgers closing out the Brewers.
Yep. By the way, that total, too, down to 49.5. So we've seen some movement toward the dog, movement toward the under. So that has been pretty quick. We'll have more on that coming up at the top of the hour. All right, you mentioned it. So let's hit to baseball really quickly. Are you surprised about this Brewers showing in this NLCS?
So you know I have the 35-1 ticket on the Brewers to win the National League. So we got there. It's the Dodgers. There were several opportunities for me to bet the Dodgers at like 6-1 to win the World Series in the last month of the year, which I didn't do. It's just against my religion to lay 190 in a series. So my monetization put myself in a spot that I could get middled. I laid the Dodgers by a game and a half, minus 118, right, to win a quarter of what I would have won on the Brewers. I'm not shocked. I thought they would lose Game 1. I thought that because of the way it fell, and you're going opener, and they're going Snell, but I thought they had a shot with Peralta against Yamamoto, and then you go to LA 1-1 and see what happens. But I mean, the pitching performance of the Dodgers has been incredible, and they don't have to be healthy at any point during the year. They got to be healthy. Last year, they didn't have any starters. I said, how could they win the World Series? They have no starters with a great bullpen. This year, they've got 4. They can just roll this 4 deep, right?
Yep. That's what was driving me nuts at the beginning of the series. So, like, I took 1.5 games with the Brewers because that was my bet for the series. But the fact that of the first 2 games of the 18 innings, 17 of them go to your starters, you're like, you can't get to the bullpen. It was incredible.
There were no high-leverage pitches that the Dodgers pitchers had to throw outside of because Sasaki couldn't throw strikes to the 8 and 9 place hitter. It created leverage at the end of the bottom of the ninth.
Yep.
I thought the 2 big innings of the series, though, JVT, were the bottom of the 4th in Game 1 when the Dodgers have that call it what you want.
Sure.
Brilliant double play, to me, horrific base running.
Mm-hmm.
How could Teoscar Hernandez? He's got to be tagging. Doesn't matter whether he caught the ball or hit the wall. You're tagging, the ball goes to the glove, you run. Will Smith's looking at the third base umpire. The play's right in front of him. He's signaling no catch.
Yep.
Why are you running back? Anyhow, you come back and Snell has a 2-minute and 40-second inning.
Yep.
Right? And then when you do get the leadoff homer against Yamamoto, Peralta can't even get one shutdown half inning. And to me, that was just it.
Yep. All right, so you think this ends tonight? $2 favorites, no last gasp, go back to Milwaukee?
It's again an openers game against Shohei, and I don't know if you win. I don't know if you're the Dodgers. If you win, you even throw Snell in Game 5 if you lose tonight?
Oh, I wouldn't.
I'd wait, right? You try to win Game 5 at home and save have a fully rested Snell for Game 1, either at home to Seattle or more likely than not now at Toronto.
Okay, to that point, Toronto $1.20 favorite on the road against Seattle.
And
It's
you get Gausman. It's a great spot, isn't it, for what Toronto's done here?
I'm surprised it's not Wu. Like they asked Wu at the beginning of the series, like, hey, when do you think you're going to be available? And he said Game 5. And then here we are. And it's like, all right, I mean, why not try to throw him out there for Game 5?
I know. When I saw he was on the roster, I said that changes this whole series.
Yep.
To me, and I'll say it. I said you can't start Scherzer. I'm wrong.
Yep.
Right? I was wrong. He was terrific. They rolled the dice with Scherzer. I said I would even thrown Bassett. I know he gave up some runs in a relief appearance, but they flipped the whole script on this series now, and now all the pressure is on Seattle. And you've got Gausman, who was very good in Game 1.
I will say, we've had a lot of conversations. You know how I like data and analytics, and there's so much a big part of this. Man, sometimes you're just an old school pitcher who knows, like, I've pitched in a lot of big games, and I'm just going to come out here, even though I haven't pitched since like the end of September, and I'm just going to ball out. And
5 2/3. Yeah. I thought the ceiling was 3.
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to let him. I thought, why don't you have an opener so he doesn't have to face the top of the order?
Yep.
And then you may get 2 out of him, maybe 3. He's not going to face the top of the order twice, and he gets 5 2/3 out of him. Yep. I thought they did a great job also with Bieber. My biggest single bet of the postseason was Bieber over 14.5 outs because he had to go 5 for them to have any chance in the series, I thought. And then they did a good job getting him out of there because he's your Game 7 starter if it goes 7.
Yep. Yeah, and Bieber, look, it was fine. Yep. That was a high-scoring game, but either way, Toronto's offense has been incredible. Last 20 seconds real quick. Anything in hockey tonight? You got anything?
I didn't play anything in hockey. I'm still waiting and seeing on some of these teams. The Panthers look every bit of the hurt team that they've been, and I think I would just play against the Panthers on the road at this point in the season as an autoplay.
Or the Rangers at home.
Oh, my God. And then they only scored one on the road. It's unbelievable.
Mike, appreciate it. Thank you very much, as always. Mike Palm again. We'll come back. Will Hill is going to join us on the other side, get his best bets for the weekend.
Watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
You know, VSiN's expanding their podcast network, folks, and one of the new podcasts that has joined the Vegas Stats and Information Network family is the Should Have Bet More pod with Will Hill, who joins us now in his usual Friday spot on Money Moves. We get to him via the Progressive Guest Line. Will, how are you doing today?
JVT, what's going on? Yeah, happy to have the podcast back with VSiN. I brought it to VSiN originally, and they said, no, we're not really interested. I said, I forgot to tell you, I have JVT as one of my guests, and they said, where can we sign? So you were nice enough to come on. I think you're one of my more frequent guests on the Should Have Bet More podcast. New episode out today, talking bets for the weekend, college football, NFL. So check it out.
Some would say that this network was built on my shoulders. I don't know who would say that, but I think some would say it. But either way, you know, I have no rest for the weary. We continue to push on to greater and greater heights. All right, let's talk a little bit about some football later tonight. We actually have, I think it's a really good Friday slate. Not only do we have a big one in the ACC, we have the drama later tonight between North Carolina and Cal. But let's start with the big one between Miami and Louisville because we've seen some movement over the last hour, Will. This was 13.5 for a good portion of this morning. Now we're down to 11 in a couple of spots. What do you make of what Louisville's got in store for the Hurricanes today?
I like Louisville, but, the numbers do matter. And you could have gotten, I think, 14 minus 120 last night. You're dealing with some dead numbers. 12 is a dead number, but 13 is not a dead number. So I still like Louisville. I think just directionally, they have the pieces to keep this game close. They have a defensive line. They have a pass rush. They have a coach who's good as a dog. And they've got some skill guys. And if you look at their season, their one loss was to Virginia. It was in overtime. It was a game where they completely dominated the stats. I understand that. Look, Miami is a unit, a wagon. They are, I think, undervalued in the futures market. You and I were talking about that last night. Still at like 8-1, I think is a good price to bet them. But I mean, look at the schedule. Miami wins this game. They're probably going undefeated. Cristobal, you never quite trust, is a big favorite. So I have a little concern that Louisville, the quarterback for Louisville, Moss, is not very mobile, and that's not a great offensive line for Louisville. And getting pressure is going to be an issue, and you have to figure out a way to deal with that. But again, good coach, good skill guys, good defensive line. I think they can hang and keep it, a 7-10 point game and make Miami sweat here. I think Miami wins the game, but I like Louisville plus the points, even though you are getting the worst number right now.
Yeah, to your point, should they win this game, I mean, it would take one of Mario Cristobal's greatest efforts to not finish the regular season undefeated, I would say, as you have Stanford, SMU, might be a tricky spot, but not really, Syracuse, NC State, Virginia Tech, and Pitt to round out the schedule if you're the Hurricanes. So to your point, too, they get this win, 8-1. Should be a lot shorter, but we will see if that is going to be the case. All right, let's move on to the weekend. Let's take a look. Vandy and LSU. You and I were talking about this last night. Some allege that they have point spread statistics dating back to 1945. I don't know if that's entirely accurate, but we do know that Vandy is favored here with a total of 48.5. How are you attacking this one?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. You haven't heard this all week. You haven't heard this anywhere. So pull over and write this down. I don't know if you know this, JVT. Vanderbilt is a favorite against LSU. Vanderbilt favored over a ranked team. Doesn't happen very often from what I've told. That's one that hasn't been out there that much this week. I like the under. Vandy's one loss here was against Bama, and that was a game where they really got controlled, dominated in time of possession. They ran out of steam, of course. 2 turnovers in the red zone didn't help either, but I think they're going to make it a point of emphasis to control the ball, control the clock. That Bama loss, I think there was like 37.5 to 22.5 in time of possession. They really just were on the field a lot defensively, which is not something you want. So, and then you look at LSU. I know LSU might be banged up defensively, but LSU doesn't score a lot of points. They don't give up a lot of points. So you just look at their final scores. It's a lot of 20-10. They lost to Ole Miss 24-19 where they scored a touchdown late. Getting to the 48-plus points you need to go over this, I think, is a lot. And I'd like that first quarter under 10.5, even if you have to pay a little extra juice, that 130, 135. Look, 7-3 after a quarter, you cash your bet. That means one team scored a touchdown, the other scored a field goal. You got 2 scores in a first quarter, you could still stay under. I think that's such a key number. All you need is like 1 6-7 minute drive that ends in a field goal, and you're in pretty good shape there. So I like that first quarter under, and I like the under for the game. I actually think Vandy wins. Vandy was impressive to me in that Bama game. I thought I don't want to say should have won the game, but I thought they could have won the game. I mean, just a couple turnovers here. When you're Vandy and you're at Alabama, you can't afford to turn it over in the red zone multiple times. But I thought they acquitted themselves well, and I do think they win, but I like the under more than anything.
All right, let's go to the SEC, or let's stay in the SEC, excuse me. Let's go to Tennessee and Alabama. Alabama, an 8.5-point favorite, 8 here at Circa, where I currently sit, total of 59. How do you see this going down? It's been a tough stretch of games for Alabama, but I guess that's life in the SEC.
Yeah, it sure is. Tennessee has got some guys in the front 4 that you like, but their back 7 is really a mess. I watched a lot of them the past month or so for whatever reason, where I get just, you have those teams where you sit there and you watch a good portion of their game compared to the other games for whatever reason. They're just not good in the secondary. Bama is going to be able to move the ball and I think move it up and down the field pretty well. I think this is first team to 38, first team to 40. Arkansas moved on them. Mississippi State, even UAB kind of moved the ball on them. The other side of the ball, in Alabama, this is not Saban's Alabama team. They get no pass rush. They really don't rush the passer well at all. I think Tennessee will move the ball well. So I think that 59.5, I think that's a little low. I think we're well into the 60s in this game. So I like the over.
All right. Will Hill with us. Follow him on Twitter at @NotTheWillHill. Going over the college football slate. We have one more in college. Mike Palm and I were just discussing this right now. USC travels to take on Notre Dame. Interesting contest, a number that I think screams to you, hey, man, USC kind of getting disrespected here, I would assume. A very good win and cover, of course, over Michigan this last weekend. Will, outside of maybe some weather and some rain, which might be part of this, what am I missing that this is 9.5 in favor of Notre Dame?
You hit on it, the travel and the weather, and Notre Dame is kind of coming to its own defensively. That being said, this is an elite USC offense, number 1 in the country, yards per play, number 1 points per game. Again, you're going to have to maybe deal with some weather here, but I think Lemon, Mayava, the other receivers, I'm worried a little bit about the running back situation, but I think they have, if nothing else, a backdoor opportunity here. I still don't know if this Notre Dame defense is great, So to me, I feel like I'm walking into a trap a little bit. Sometimes it looks too good to be true, and sometimes that stuff is, it looks too good to be true for a reason. But I'm with you. I think USC really keeps this game close, and I'll take the points with USC. And I do think 10s are out there or will pop up, have pop up. So don't take the 9.5. You can get a 10. That 10's obviously a key-ish number. So I'm with you, though. I like USC, even though I do have some concern about the spot. They don't travel well. They don't travel well to the east, but I think they keep this one close.
9.5 across the board on the screen I'm looking at, but a couple of 9.5s juice to the favorite side. So we will see by the time we get to kickoff, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time on Saturday, if it can get there. All right, let's head to the National Football League. Your boys, your favorite team in the whole wide world, the Minnesota Vikings, taking on the defending champs. What do we do here?
First off, if anyone hasn't seen it, the Justin Jefferson pranking the GM Kwesi is just one of the funnier things you'll ever see. He played it off so well. I like Minnesota, and I did not think I was going to like Minnesota. I thought this was a little cheap. I thought I was going to bet the Eagles. But if you look at the injury report, it's actually kind of favorable for Minnesota. Cashman might be back. Van Ginkel, I think, might be a week away, but they're getting a lot of their offensive linemen back. Meanwhile, Philly just doesn't look right offensively. 28th in the league yards per play on offense. They've been outscored on the season. You're giving Flores and a good Viking coaching staff extra prep time. I like Minnesota here. I think they win the game.
All right. Will with us again, going over his best bets for the weekend. Lions, what do we make of what we've got here?
I like Detroit. I think they bounce back. Campbell has been good off of a loss. Campbell's basically good against the spread in any sort of subset you want to throw out there. And I don't quite buy into Tampa and Baker Mayfield and all this stuff. They're injured still at the skill guys positions. And these teams played a few times in the past couple of years. Last year, they knocked me and a lot of people out of Survivor. Tampa pulled off the upset. Detroit dominated that game statistically, outgained them by 220, 230 yards. The other two games, Detroit won comfortably. I think Detroit wins this game by a touchdown plus, so I'm looking to lay it here with the Lions.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about this coming up in a little bit. It's a really fascinating game from a pricing standpoint for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All right, last 90 seconds. I do want to get to your NBA win totals, but baseball is slightly more important. Can Bryce Miller do it again today for the Seattle Mariners?
I like his under 11.5 outs. I just think they have Wu waiting in the wings, and I think they'll try to just turn over the lineup once. And I'm guessing this postseason usage could be tough for these pitchers, but I think get through the lineup once, then we go to Wu, then we try to get our high leverage arms in for Seattle. Would be a devastating loss to lose this series the way it's gone, having never been to a World Series. But I like under outs for Miller.
Man, there's a lot there. I just don't know why you don't go with Wu initially. Like, who cares? Put him out there.
Yeah.
And then, or save him for, I don't know. But, hey, I'm not a manager, and a third win in the series would be pretty good for you, especially the way the series has gone. All right, last minute. We've got some win totals, I'm told, for the NBA. What do you got?
Phoenix Suns under 31.5 wins. To me, the West is just stacked, loaded. It's Devin Booker and kind of a bunch of spare pieces. He gets hurt occasionally, Booker. There's always a chance where they trade him, which if you're the Suns, I don't know why you wouldn't trade him. What are you clinging to try and get in a play-in scenario? I like under 31.5 wins. I think that's obviously one of the worst trades of all time, that Durant trade. What a disaster that was. And, boy, life comes at you quick. Pacers under 37.5 wins. I know Carlisle is a floor raiser. I know the East is weak, but with no Halliburton and no Turner, that Halliburton was just such a big part of their identity. I don't know that they get to the 38, 39 plus wins. I don't see them flirting with playing or a 500-ish season. So Pacers under, Suns under. You approve or disapprove?
The Pacers won. They have an NBA win total contest out here that I'll be entering over the weekend. I'm going to go Pacers over. That's the one that I would disagree with.
Ooh.
Head to head. We'll talk again in a couple of months. Will, good to talk to you, bud. Thank you.
All right, see you guys. Thanks.
Should have bet more pod. Check it out up at vsin.com and wherever you get your podcast. We'll come back, take a look at our market ratings and more for the week of football.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
VSiN Pro subscribers now have exclusive access to our new AI player prop projections powered by Opta AI, the same trusted brand behind elite soccer analytics in the UK. You get data-driven projections for quarterbacks, wide receivers, and running backs compared directly to DraftKings lines to help you find value. And guess what? Starting on Tuesday, The start of the NBA season coming up. VSiN's offering a free preview of our new NBA player prop projections as well, available for a limited time to tip off the season. So check it all out now. VSiN.com/props. Explore the numbers before the free preview for the NBA ends. That's VSIN.com/props. Back here on Money Moves, Jonathan Von Tobel flying solo. Stormy Montoni out in Lexington. She'll have Kentucky, Texas this coming weekend. And I believe she'll do her usual hit on Saturday. So if you want to hear from Stormy, she'll be on with Tim Murray, as usually is in the mornings here on the network. So let's get to what we usually do here at this time, our Week 7 market power ratings, as you look ahead to not only the week that will be in the National Football League, but where the market believes these teams will be. There's a lot of different places I think we can start as we look at this, but I think one place to begin is at the top, as the Kansas City Chiefs are back, folks. We had talked about this on the Pod to the Futures. Is it the time to buy? Market says we're back. Chiefs now with the Packers on the 85 line, the highest power-rated team in the National Football League. Now, you will notice a missing team, the Bills. That is, of course, the Bills on a bye week, so did not include them here in this spot, including our market power ratings. But either way, the Bills are still going to be up there. Chiefs now reign supreme once again. I think it makes a ton of sense as we look at it. Now, let's talk about how we figured this out one more time. As Kansas City, of course, is at home taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. We're sitting at a 12-point line. We've been using 1.5 for our home field, so that would put you at about a 10.5-point difference on a neutral between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders. And you can see right there, of course, if you're watching up at VSiN.com or YouTube TV for our radio audience, that would put the Raiders on the 74.5 line, equals on a neutral, according to the betting market, with the New York Jets. I think these two teams are probably right about where they should be. Raiders have slipped quite a bit since that opening week win over the New England Patriots. And for the Chiefs, a team that has been biding its time and waiting for some guys to come back. And now, with Rice back in the fold and a full complement of weapons, I don't think it surprises anybody that Kansas City would find itself back at the top. And they're with the Green Bay Packers, who have been pretty consistent for the most part, outside of the loss, of course, to the Cleveland Browns and the tie with the Dallas Cowboys. So with that out of the way, there's a couple of spots that we can go to that I think are pretty interesting. But let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a second. I find this team and where it's been at from a power rating standpoint, according to the betting market, absolutely fascinating. They get the Detroit Lions this weekend. Current number right now, Lions at some spots are about a 5.5-point favorite. Total of 52.5. Number here at Circa is just that. So it's a pretty easy delineation. Look, all right, 85.5, remove 1.5. It's a 4-point difference on a neutral. That would put you, if you're looking up here, Lions on the 84 line. That would put the Buccaneers on the 80 line. What I wrestle with, and what has been incredible to watch as these market ratings have evolved, is that the Buccaneers have been all over the place as the market tries to figure out what to do with this team. And you see this kind of push and pull with where they've been rated on a week-to-week basis. You'll have a couple of weeks where the Buccaneers, for example, a week ago, were sitting on about the 82 line just a week ago. But these injuries continue to pile up, as you see. But they're also maybe getting a little bit healthier at wide receiver, so that's another dynamic that you have to factor in. Defensively, they've been beat up too. So you see these weeks where they get upgraded and downgraded. So I mentioned in week 6, they're on the 82 line. But then in week 5, they're sitting at the 81. We can go back and forth with all of these. You go back to week 3, I think it was, when they took on the Houston Texans, where the Texans were believed to be better than them. I mean, it went in week 2. The whole point here is that a team that has been riddled with injury, and I think rightfully so, has been perceived to be really on the edge of kind of falling off of a cliff. It's why Baker Mayfield is now in the throes of contention for most valuable player. This is a team that, by all accounts, because of injuries and other statistics, they probably shouldn't be here, and you're waiting for the shoe to drop. And it would make some sense that a Lions team who has the skills they do offensively would maybe be the team to force that issue. But let us not forget that the Lions have their own problems in terms of injuries, especially on the back end of that defense. This, to me, from just a power rating standpoint, from a results standpoint, of course, in the NFC, where a 1 seed is still on the line for these teams, should they maintain their winning ways, this game carries so much weight. Will mentioned it in our last segment. If you missed it, check out the Money Moves podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. The fact that these two teams have played one another with some frequency over the last few years and kind of going back and forth in terms of the results in those contests, there's so much to this game. But from a power rating and a point spread perspective, I wanted to come into this week and say, you know, this is the week that we're going to get Tampa Bay finally. But we get to this point where you have this gap between Tampa Bay and Detroit. You have this area that we have to put Tampa Bay. So, again, if we could throw this back up for our radio audience, I'll describe this. But, for the Lions, again, if you think the Buccaneers should be higher, that means you have to bump the Lions up. And so maybe you could say that, all right, let's put the Lions on the same line with the Chiefs and the Packers. You could make that argument, and you would bump the Buccaneers up then by extension to 81. But if you want to bump them up higher, if you think the Bucs should be on that 82 line, that means that you would make the Lions the best team in the National Football League. Because, again, this is a couplet. This is two teams that are playing each other, and that's how we derive these ratings. So if we're moving one team, we have to move their opponent. So you can't really make the Lions that high, which brings me back to, as much as I want to say this Bucs team cannot continue to do this from a rating standpoint, I feel really tempted to come back in here on Tampa Bay this week, given where we're at from the power rating, where the market has them at this point right now. All right, let's talk about a couple of other teams. How about the drama for the week? The Miami Dolphins. Let's start with this group because I am been simultaneously right and wrong about the Miami Dolphins. Now, shout out to Stormy Buonantony, who, of course, is our regular co-host here. But last week, I asked her the question, which was, hey, man, am I doing too much? Am I just doing too much with my hatred for the Miami Dolphins? Am I blindly fading this team, or should I back off a little bit? And sure enough, backing off proved to be the right choice, and that's what she told me to do, because the Chargers, of course, find themselves in a shootout. They barely get by them. But Miami has found themselves in a precipitous drop from a power rating standpoint. Week 1, the Dolphins, if you go back to our market ratings that we've been doing every week, we're on the 80 line. If you look at our ratings today, right now, the Dolphins find themselves on the 75 line. For our radio audience, that makes them just 2 points better than a team like the Bengals, who just pulled off an upset last week. It would make them just about a 3-point better on a neutral than the Tennessee Titans. This has been, I think, a point where the Dolphins, from a power rating standpoint, the results are there, which means I'm right in that I think this team was a team that was going to lose a ton of games. Where I was wrong was from a fading them by a market expectation standpoint on a week-to-week basis. I think I'm wrong because Miami, they're so low that they've actually gotten some of these covers. I mean, for example, they've covered 3 out of the last 4 games Miami has. So while the results really haven't been there, the market has been seemingly too low on Miami. So now you have to make the case or the argument for this week for the Dolphins. What do you do with them against Cleveland? It was sitting on that key number. There was some buyback off of that. It's 2.5 minus 115. We have indications that maybe some weather issues there. But at this point right now, the Browns are perceived to be the better team than the Miami Dolphins. And I can understand an argument that would say, that seems like a bridge too far. Maybe the elements don't help, and maybe that's going to be one of the outside factors that then changes the way that you attack this. But if you're somebody that thinks that, if you've been watching the show, that I've been too tough on Miami, I know we've got a buddy, a listener that's been on it a couple of times. I think that maybe there's a fair argument to that point that Miami has gotten maybe a little bit too far out. Let's talk about the Dolphins' former opponent from a couple of weeks ago, the Carolina Panthers, because this has been one of our teams that has been slowly upgrading, and the Panthers find themselves in an incredible situation this weekend in the role reversal, and we're starting to see some market pushback on this. Panthers, week 3, bottomed out as the worst team, if you remember, in the National Football League on the 74 line. If you're looking at this right now, Panthers right now find themselves on the 77 line. That would equate them to equals on a neutral with the Arizona Cardinals. And that's right back where they were at the beginning of the season heading into week 1. So the Panthers are a really interesting case because they have found themselves bouncing back and forth. They also find themselves upgraded after consecutive home wins against the Dolphins and the Cowboys. And this offense is great, but now you have a big role reversal. You are not only a favorite in a game, you're a road favorite against the New York Jets team that finds itself equals with the Raiders, just barely ahead of a team like the Bengals prior, of course, to this last result on Thursday, and just about 2.5 points better than the Titans. I think you can argue that the Jets are better than what we have seen here, but this is the lowest power rating of the season for New York. We always talk about buying low and selling high. Might be a time to buy low. Some spots like Superbook are at a pick right now in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a flip back in the other direction. So if you wanted to use Carolina for a teaser, for example, wait till Sunday, you might be able to get it. But that is an incredible story, I think, to monitor for a Carolina team that has shown offensively some real strengths in their running game. And let's end here. How about the Philadelphia Eagles? They've lost 2 straight. They failed to cover their last 2. Now we see them downgraded. If you look here, they have been downgraded by about 2 points from their peak on the season to the 83 line, 2 points behind Kansas City on an equal field, according to the betting market, with teams like the Colts, the Chargers, the Rams. It was a team that came in as one of the highest power-rated teams in the National Football League, just right up there with Buffalo when the season started. And now, of course, they find themselves about 2 points lower than where the season began. Real quick note, speaking of the Colts, biggest upgrade from week 1 to week 7 in our market power ratings is Indianapolis. They've been upgraded by about 4.5 points. And for the Bengals, no surprise here, the biggest downgrade of about 9 points from where they were to start the year to where they're at now. When we come back, we have Friday Night Lights, good one in the ACC. We'll give you some metrics, some statistics, and some questions to ask behind the line move. And make sure you go to VSiN.com, folks. Check out everything we have to offer. You can sign up for as little as $9.99. You get the props, you get everything that we have, the daily best bets and more. VSiN.com/subscribe.